presentation, a few call to action questions. Have you all downloaded the WeAreDeveloper app? If you have, raise your hand. Yes. If you ask a question to a developer and they have to talk, they will never talk. If you ask them to raise their hand, they will do it. It still amazes me after so many years how this can keep on being like this. So I'm asking you all for this question because via the WeAreDeveloper app, you can do so many things. You can follow the program. You can create your own profile and be a part of our job platform. And you can ask questions to the speakers, which are on stage, and they can answer to you, either if we have the time with a small Q&A here on stage, or they can see your question via the app, and you can approach them also directly here after the talk. A big thank you goes to all the partners that made this possible, but Neon is one of those that is providing us with amazing coffee. And I would like to get now to the talk of the day. So the topic of this talk is really, really nice. It is about the importance of educating developers instead of marketing developers. And these two guys that are going to hold the talk are two nerds which are passionate about education. We can call each other nerds. That's not a slur. So I would like to welcome on stage Andrew McLean and PJ Metz.
Right. Hello.
Hey, everybody.
You ready?
You ready?
You ready?
Let's
Go
do
ahead.
this.
Yeah, all right.
All right, so everybody, welcome to Developer Tested, Educator Approved. My name is Mr. McLean.
I am Mr. Metz.
And in case you did not know, there will be a test today. In fact, your employers, thank you all for registering before, by the way. Your employers have connected with us, and your refund for coming all the way to Berlin, especially if you've come from afar, is actually going to be based on your test results today.
Will tell you how much money you're going to be getting back from your companies for the refund. So I've got Scantrons up here. You're going to need to come get a Scantron. In the back, if you could be a little quiet, we're trying to do a test here. Thank you very much.
So if you haven't read these test instructions, you should probably take a photo, and you should probably have done it 5 minutes ago because, in fact, we actually have the test instructions that are coming up.
QR code. It's 100 questions long, 2 essays. You're going to have 20 minutes to finish this test. Please go ahead and make sure you scan this QR code.
You should be serious. You should be looking and scanning this QR. You're like not worried enough right now. You really have lots of extra money.
This is a big test that you need
to take,
all right?
All right.
Very good, very good. Okay.
So you may have realized if you got to our QR code. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Spin? Does this actually spin?
It does actually spin.
Okay, good.
So everybody, welcome to our actual talk for today. Developer tested, educator approved. My name's Andrew.
I'm PJ.
And we are here today to get you excited about education.
I don't know what you want me to say. Give me this controller. It's time for the agenda. They need to know what we're actually going to talk about. So we're here to talk about the idea of developers as customers versus looking at your developers as learners, and the difference between those two is going to be pretty stark by the end of this. We're going to talk about why we are even giving this talk. It's not because we have the best suspenders and hats in the world. It's because we were both educators, but more about that later. We're going to talk about popular DevRel activities that you do for developers in order to learn products. And we're going to talk about how there are classroom equivalents for those activities, and that there is pedagogy and educational theory behind those activities. And we're going to tell you how you can make your activities better as an organizer, and we're going to tell you how you can make it better as an attendee. Andrew's going to talk a little bit about this next section.
Boom. All right, so we know that we've been teachers for a little while. We know at some point you will all zone out. In fact, I know at least 5% of you have forgotten where you are already. It's okay, you're safe. So what we want to do is give you a little bit of a background on why this is a topic that we made the connection between, aside from the fact that we both work doing DevRel and have a background in education. Has anybody in the audience ever seen this before up on the screen? If you are in marketing, you probably have, this is a marketing funnel. It's actually known as Lewis's purchasing funnel. And this is the way that we traditionally view marketing to developers. We kind of started awareness, and we try and bring developers down to like loyalty and advocacy, get them using our software and tools, and hopefully get them building and talking to their friends about this. Now, we wondered, what if you could view through a different lens? Because we saw this fun, also triangle shape that was flipped the upside down, but actually had some very similar concepts in there, with the bottom here being about remembering things, just like that awareness at the top of the funnel. And by the time you got up to that creation and evaluation, that sounds a lot like advocacy and actually using a platform. So we saw this and we said to ourselves, we think that there's a real connection here.
And that connection is that they're inverses of each other. So if we look at the top at awareness, that's, oh, we've heard of your product. If we look at the bottom, remembering, if I ask you when was the War of 1812, that's right, 1947. If you remember a fact, that's the lowest level of learning. Remembering facts is easy. All the way at the top is creating. I used to be a literature teacher, so at the bottom is, who are the main characters of a story? What is the plot? At the top is, write me a poem that you think this main character might write based on their characteristics. So moving them from the bottom to the top in education means getting them from the easiest thing to do to something that's much more difficult and a little bit harder to work with. Now, why are we here? Here's me doing my best Robin Williams in the Dead Poet Society impression. I have a Bachelor of Arts in English Literature. That means I got a degree in reading poetry. And then I have a Master of Education in Secondary English Education, which means I got a degree in teaching poetry. I taught for 11 years literature, English as a second language, a little bit of physical education there for summer school, math and science. And Andrew also is an achieved teacher.
Yeah, so I too decided to never leave school once I started at 6. But I really wanted to start paying for it at some point and then just keep paying over the years. And so then I figured I might as well get paid for it. And so I have a diploma in teacher education, secondary science teacher. So I got to like make cool chemistry explosions for a while. And then I went back to school, got my master's in education. And I actually teach teachers how to teach, which I think is kind of cool. All right, so we got you in. You're interested, you know education, developer advocacy, work is related. We are legit people despite our attire, which will all make sense soon or not. Let's talk about some DevRel activities with a teaching twist. And now, because we're teachers, we want to tell you the order of what you should expect. So we're first going to talk about a dev advocacy or a developer engagement activity. We're then going to talk about a pedagogy, and all pedagogy means is like teaching theory and practice. We're then going to talk about some questions that you might ask yourself to make your activity more related to that practice. And then we're going to give you a great example to look up for this. So let's get started with our first example. Who here has ever watched a live coding stream or done a code tutorial somewhere before?
Good, okay.
Amazing. So as you might guess from that GIF up there, it is very similar to a lab demonstration. So just like I got to light things on fire and make things explode when I was a science teacher, that too is what I am trying to do in all of my live coding demonstrations, and definitely what I will do on Monday when I get back to work. So the pedagogy, the teaching theory connected to this is something called social learning theory. Anybody in the audience ever heard of this before?
Ooh,
there we go. Yes, somebody has. And so this was created by this fine-looking gentleman here, Dr. Albert Bandura, who is a fellow Canadian. In case you didn't sense it from the difference in the accents, I am not from the U.S. Let me say that really loudly. What is social learning theory? Again, teachers, we try and make this as teachery as possible, highlight only the things you should remember. So social learning theory was a theory that said people learn through observing, imitating, and modeling if you focus on things like attention, retention, reproduction, and motivation in order to help people learn a new skill without actually doing that real thing in real time.
Mr. McLean, I have a question.
Yes, in the back, Mr. Is
Yeah,
it Mr. Metz? Is it?
Yeah, Metz. If Dr. Bandura were to give us some advice for people who were running live coding streams or attending live coding streams, what sort of questions would he ask to help us make that better?
Well, that is a great question, PJ. It's almost as if we did a little bit of practice for this and maybe lined up that question from the audience, definitely. So, what are some questions that Mr. Bandura, Dr. Bandura, because of course we are learned scholars, all of us, live coding tutorials, what might Dr. Bandura say to live coding or tutorial coders, so the people that are making these streams? Well, he might ask, are your presence and explanations memorable beyond the code itself? Now, I guarantee you that you will forget 90% of our talk today, but you will tell somebody that you went to this talk and you saw these two random dudes wearing these propeller hats and suspenders, and that will probably serve as a core memory for you for the rest of your life. You're welcome. And maybe you'll remember some of the rest of this. You've got to make things memorable beyond just the code. Do things to make it fun. Is the complexity of your code or your example appropriate for viewers to replicate? So, if you are doing a tutorial on Kubernetes and you're doing that for an experienced DevOps engineer, great, probably very appropriate. Yeah. However, if you are doing that for a junior software engineer, like 2 seconds out of university, and they cannot pronounce cube, let alone Kubernetes, you probably are not in the right space for building out this tutorial. So think about your audience when you're doing these things. And are you giving clear reasons for viewers to replicate and implement the code? Yeah, we all love doing the coolest, newest thing that's on the hype train that is relevant for about 1.5% of the global population that knows about the technology. But unless it's something that's going to be really meaningful and valuable for those actual developers that are watching, it's not going to be something that they're going to want to replicate. On the viewing side, what are things that you can do if you're not making these streams, but you're watching them to get the value out of them? Are you in an environment where you can fully focus on the code? Now, we've all sat and put like a stream on our phone in our back pocket and listened to it. Are we really getting the most out of that? Probably not. Things to think about as a viewer. How can you create code snippets or bookmarks, things to remember those core pieces? Again, you won't always have Andrew and PJ up on a stage wearing fun hats and suspenders. By the way, we will be selling these hats and suspenders after the show.
€400 for the hats.
That was way, way lower than I was going to say. So one of the great things is platforms like Twitch have the ability to do this really easily. Things like clipping Twitch streams just for those core pieces that you need to remember. And finally, a great question is, do you have an active project where you can try out these things right now? If you say you're going to leave it for 6 weeks, it's probably never going to happen. So do it right away. That's what you want to do. Now, if you're looking for a great example of this, you can look at Learn with Jason Langsdorf. Check that out. It is really, really good, and he does a great job of this edutainment, education and entertainment, real word coined by us, trademarked. All right, so what's the takeaway from this, from Dr. Bandura? Is this activity memorable for participants? Is it memorable? All right, let's move on to our next one, hackathons. I'm sure you can probably already guess what the thing that's connected from the classroom is going to be. It is going to be a group project, which I know you all love in the audience. So that's connected to a pedagogy known as constructionism, which was coined by this beautiful specimen on the screen, Dr. Seymour Papert, actually one of the co-founders of the MIT Media Lab, where Scratch was created. And he created a programming language called Logo. And what constructionism is all about, it's in the name. It's about hands-on experiences and building meaningful projects. That's going to help you learn through this process. So what are some questions that he might ask to a hackathon organizer? Well, one thing is the experience I'm creating one of hard fun? We all remember those activities that were really fun that we don't remember from school, and the activities that were really hard and we didn't really feel like we learned anything from either. Creating a hard, fun situation is key. Does the environment encourage productive failure? Failing sucks. Failing forward is awesome. Create those opportunities. And are there diverse opportunities for sharing beyond the pitch? Pitching is great, not for everybody. Creating opportunities for people to have conversations and reflect with others outside of that opportunity is key. And for participants, a lot of the same things. Is the project I'm building personally meaningful? So is this something that you're going to use, or is it something that you're just going to forget about afterwards? Are you reflecting on failures to understand and overcome challenges? Are you failing forward, productive failure? And the final question, are you leveraging feedback loops, or are you actively asking for feedback to improve your projects? Great example here, Battlesnake. If you've never heard of it, go check it out. It is a great example of hard, fun, productive failure. Check that out at the end. All right, one more. And so our takeaway from Seymour is going to be, is this activity meaningful for participants? Boom, boom, hey.
All right, so the next talk is about community spaces, and these are either live or digital. If you've got a community on Discord or Slack, there is a lot of work that goes into that, making that a safe space for everybody. The classroom equivalent is going to be classroom management. As a teacher, I wasn't just responsible for teaching 17-year-olds about The Great Gatsby. I was also responsible for making sure they weren't hitting each other while I was teaching them about The Great Gatsby. Classroom management is a super important part of education, and it's a super important part of having developer communities. Now, this is a name you might actually recognize, B.F. Skinner. His big pedagogical idea was operant conditioning, also sometimes called behaviorism. Skinner believed that behavior is reinforced by the consequences of that behavior. So if you get a desired consequence, then you're more likely to repeat that behavior. If you have an undesired consequence, you are less likely to repeat that behavior. So the idea behind behaviorism is create the type of consequences that people want to happen in order to make that happen more, and make bad consequences for things you want to happen less. Now, if you're looking at a community, Skinner might ask questions of the organizers like, is it clear that the moderators are actually present in that community space? There was a big joke on the internet, I don't know if they still do it because I'm ancient, but it used to be, mods are asleep, post something that's not allowed in the community. Once the mods aren't there, people start acting however you want. Once a teacher leaves the classroom, the kids start throwing things at each other and a paper airplane goes through the, it's in every movie you've ever seen when a teacher leaves the room. So knowing that the moderators are there means that the people in the community are more likely to follow the rules that you set up, which actually, is there a place where the community members can really see the rules? Did they only see it when they entered the Discord for the first time, or are they often referenced by the moderator team? Are both the expectations and the consequences clear? I've seen a lot of codes of conduct for communities that say, be nice. That does nothing. You have to set up clear expectations about what is expected of them, what is not allowed, and then the exact consequences of those actions, so that when you point to the code of conduct, you're pointing to a document they've not only seen a bunch, but has clear expectations of the community. Now, if you're a member of a community, you're expected to act a certain way, but can you identify who the moderators are? Can you see and know who's actually in charge? Because we do not need undercover cops on Discord. We need clearly marked moderators. And if you can't see that, it's time to talk to the people who set up the Discord. Are you also praising good people, or are you only arguing with bad people? Praising good behavior makes it happen more often. This is why students got gold stars all the time, because gold stars are absolutely the coolest thing in the world that a teacher can give to you. If you're only arguing with bad people, often these trolls are looking for that attention. So if that's all you're doing, you're actually not really helping the community. And furthermore, are you acting like a vigilante by trying to stop these bad people, or are you working with the moderators to ensure that they're seeing the behavior because that's their job? You're not Batman. You are a member of a community, and it's important to act accordingly. A great example of a community that does this well is GitHub Campus Experts. It just happens to be the program I run at GitHub. Campus Experts are fantastic. If you want to learn more about what that is, talk to me after or go to github.com/campus-experts. It's a worldwide community of technical community managers. If you're looking to assess your activities like Skinner, does your activity and does your community have clear expectations? Finally, everyone's favorite topic, docs. Everyone loves docs. Oh, let me rephrase that. Everyone loves to hate on docs because they're often not exactly what you're looking for. Now, the equivalent in teaching is something called lesson planning. A good lesson plan lays out not just what's going to happen, but why it's happening and what the expected outcome of that is. Andrew has never, ever taught a course on 17th century British literature. If I wrote a good enough lesson plan, he could handle that class, no problem. Promise you. You could do that, right? There we go. Okay, good, good, good. The idea behind this, the pedagogy here, is called differentiated instruction. Differentiated instruction is the idea that everybody learns differently. You have a different way of creating the path in your brain from I don't know anything to I know something. And that path is different for every single person. If you are only teaching one way, you are only teaching one type of student. It's important to know that you have to have multiple paths for different learning styles. Now, if you're looking at your documentation and you want to ask questions of it the way a differentiated instruction person might ask, you might look at the writers and say, how many paths of learning do you really have in your documentation? Are your docs a wall of text? Do you have videos? Do you have sandboxes? Do you have code snippets? Do you have a bunch of ways for people to learn? Do you have links out to outside sources? Giving people multiple ways to learn the same thing means you're reaching more people. How many languages do you have as an example in your docs? Now, if your particular product only has one language that uses it, then obviously that's the only one you're going to have. But if there's multiple SDKs, if there's multiple ways to access it, if there's multiple languages that can use it, you got to have some examples for as many of them as possible. Because nothing's worse as a programmer in C# to show up and they only have stuff in Python. How are you preparing for developers of different levels? When I was first getting started in tech, I would go to the docs and I'd be like, all right, let's do some reading. And I'd get halfway through, I'd be like, I understood 2 of those words, and I don't know what I'm doing anymore, and I want to quit, and I want to go back to being a teacher because this is hard. If someone at the top had just been like, we assume you have knowledge of these topics before you read this documentation, I would have been able to stop there and go to another source to get help. Letting the person using the docs know that there's an expected level of understanding before they start reading the documentation saves them time and makes them a lot happier. Now, if you're a user looking at documentation, do you actually know how you learn best? Have you taken the time to understand the metacognition of your own ability to learn? And have you actually tried several different methods of learning before settling on the one that works best? You might have heard of these learning styles: kinesthetic learner, auditory learner, I'm a visual learner. Understanding how you actually learn helps you learn better and helps you communicate that to the people trying to educate you. And then finally, are you helping by providing your own knowledge to the docs team? A lot of docs are open source. A lot of docs want you to contribute. A lot of docs want to know what's going wrong so that they can fix it. Are you helping by doing that, or are you leaving the docs and only telling your friends that you hated the docs? A great example of really good docs is the Good Docs Project. Good Docs Project is out there making documentation for startups who don't know where to start. They have a bunch of great templates available. You can learn more at the gooddocsproject.dev. And if you want to assess your activities like Tomlinson, ask, is this activity accessible for multiple types of learners?
All right, so we are almost there, but if you are wanting to learn anything about teaching, it is say what you're going to say it, say what you said. So what did we just say? We said, if you want to assess your activities, like my good friend Ben Dura up there, you're going to be asking, is this activity memorable for your participants? Like Mr. Pappert there, is this activity meaningful for participants? Like our good friend Skinner, are you going to be asking, does this activity have clear expectations? And like our final voice from education, Dr. Tomlinson, is this activity accessible for multiple types of learners? Now, we realize that most of you spaced out like 10 minutes ago.
At the beginning.
So we're going to give you one thing to take away from this talk, and if there's nothing else, let it be this thing to take away. And it is, don't funnel your community, educate them. That's been us, everybody. My name's Andrew.
I'm PJ.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
These suspenders were...
I know, these are killer.
So, thank you very much, guys. There is one question from the crowd. Let me step on this side. We are doing a Java online programming lesson each month for 1 hour. Normally, 2 to 4 participants do small PowerPoints and talk about it. How can we improve the learning with online playgrounds? Do you have some URLs?
It's a great question, and one that, like, with 3 minutes on the stage, we may not have a good way to answer it. But what I will say is we'll put back up on the screen it's not on screen anymore. It's just us. But there's come talk to us afterwards, and we will connect you with some things. But any of those ideas that we gave you of those good projects are going to help you in that way a lot. But come talk to us afterwards. Great education conversations sometimes take a little bit more time to happen. But
a good question to ask in that situation might actually be, if you were learning it for the first time, or when you were learning it for the first time, what is it that you were stuck on, and how did you move past that? Because you're a unique learner, your unique path towards understanding might be the way someone else understands it. So one of the things I always tell junior developers is, once you learn something, write about it, and just put a blog on dev.to or something. Just put it out there, because you never know who's going to find that and find it useful.
I totally agree with you, because many times when I try to use some code, documentation we know in new technologies like never non-existing.
Yep.
But you find some people that wrote like weird comment, and then you understand,
It's always like a blog from 4 years ago that you find, you're like, oh, perfect, love it, thanks for that.
And this is a very hard question, like, how much will the huts really cost?
Oh man. I actually don't know if I can sell it, because
we're actually going to be, so we did this for y'all in Berlin, and we were like, we can't leave them behind in North America. So we're actually heading back. So if you loved this talk, in 2 weeks, we're going to be at another conference. You can come be our fans, follow us around the world. But if you want to know where you got them from, come talk to us, and I will tell you where we bought them.
It was Amazon.
It was 100% Amazon.
Okay, right now that's it. I will say, if you have any other questions, feel free to approach them personally. Thank you very much for this amazing talk. I had a lot of fun. A big round of applause to PJ and Andrew.
Thank you. Berlin.
We are going to have now a 10-minute break before we get to our next talk, 15-minute break, and it's going to be the last talk of the day. Be ready, because around 5-ish, there is going to be the last speak on the main stage, and then there is going to be the closing of the event. Thank you, everybody, for having been part of this, and see you soon.
Of course, we all have different opinions about things. But in the end of the meeting, when you go, it's still the same set of people you would want to go grab a beer with. Some of the smartest people who have ever met. In the best optics company in the world, you are learning from them every single day.
To empower the people who solve problems and advance their careers with code, so you can create more extraordinary things faster. What are you waiting for? Join Red Hat Developer today and harness the full power of open source software with Red Hat technology.